Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a New Year's edition of Birds 365, the first day of 2025, and you started off with Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. We appreciate anybody watching today. Don't forget to hit that like button. Stay subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel, and Happy New Year to all of you. Johnny Mack, Happy New Year to you, my friend. How you doing this Wednesday morning?
Doing well. Happy New Year to everybody. Hopefully 2025 is as good as 2024 was for the Philadelphia Eagles, because it's been a pretty special year to this point. We'll see if the Eagles can finish it off. But yeah, I don't know how you could have expected much more when we started this thing.
Yeah, that's true, man.
Unfortunately, you got some other big-time teams as well. But typically, if you're at this stage, you're the number one seed. That won't be the case. But number two is not too bad. And then you talk about the year Saquon Barkley had. And then the Zach Bond year, too. I want to put Zach Bond in the conversation as well, because what he did in many ways. I mean, everybody knew Saquon Barkley was good. Nobody knew Zach Bond was good.
Right. Yep.
And it's just a matter of, even people would call me a Saquon hater. And I said, yeah, but he's going to get 1,650 to 1,700 total yards. Everybody knew he was good. It was just a matter, as I said, how good. Zach Bond, that is one of the – I've been covering this league for a long time. You do not see that very often, where somebody is signed for $1.6 million. You sign him as an edge rusher, special teams player, and he's legitimately in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. You just don't see that.
Yeah, it's insane. It really is. I mean, it really is. He's that good. Wild. It's one thing to be like a Pro Bowler,
Yeah, I mean, he's doing stuff. I mean, and the consistency from week to week, you got to ask yourself, what happened? It's easy to say Vic Fangio, who is tremendous at what he does, but I mean, Vic's been coaching for 40 years. It's not like you can point to a bunch of Zach Bonds. He's had a bunch of good linebackers in his life, but they were all supposed to be good linebackers.
Right.
So you got to give most of the credit to Zach Bond, but yeah, it's a great story. So I don't know. I was thinking about that this morning, and I'm like, nobody talks about that as much as they should. Very similar to I was talking about. Now people take it for granted. The Jordan Mailata story is bonkers, outrageous.
Yeah, that's become normal now, Phil. Like we've just gotten used to it, and I don't think it's to any fault of our own. We're just used to the player now, but you're right. That is a wild story, to take a 7th round pick that played rugby, never put on a football helmet, and make him the best left tackle in football. A premium position.
Yep. So these are some of the stories you're talking about, and it's been a pretty special year for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, good stuff there. We'll talk about a couple 2024 surprises. I like that topic. We just gave you, obviously, the best one with Zach Bond, but we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to have Johnny Mack. John, get ready for this. A little bit later on this morning, I'm going to have you rank your top 10 in the NFL right now, power ranking, Johnny Mack power rankings of the NFL teams. I want to see where you stand, AFC, NFC, where it all shakes out. I got my top 10 that I did yesterday, so we'll do that a little bit later on in the show. I'll give Johnny Mack some time to think about that. John, any updates in Eagle Land? I saw they made some practice squad moves yesterday. Where are they? And it certainly does look like they're going to go down the route of, playing obviously all the backups. But I did listen to a clip yesterday from Dan Campbell and Harbaugh. And
yeah, I saw that clip. I've been saying that for years. Why does everybody act like it's a thing now?
I was floating around. Yeah. Well, they're right. I mean, it makes it's not so easy to sit everybody.
But how come I know why. I know why, but I'm just joking. I'm being – but, I mean, it's people say act it like it's – you don't have 90 players. How long have I been saying this? You got 47 game day actives.
Right.
You can make 6 guys, and what they were saying as a head coach, all right, then you become, if you want to make guys fully inactive, it's like then you don't want to upset other guys.
Right.
Now, in the case
AJ,
of
I'm going to make you inactive, but Devontae, you got to
exactly,
rest.
exactly. So, it is more difficult than people realize, and it's not like a preseason atmosphere because certain guys have to play. But and the biggest news this week is going to be Saquon, and he's the one I'm making inactive. I mean, it's pretty. I don't think anybody's going to complain about that.
How many do you get? 6? 7?
Yeah. Depending on guys are if guys are. You can always not. You have to dress a certain. You can only elevate 2 people from the practice squad. So I assume they'll do that. Now, back in the COVID days, they tried that. It was a joke. They put a bunch of guys in the COVID protocol, and they were able to completely act like a preseason environment, because then you had the dispensation where if you put somebody up, bring somebody up, you can't do that anymore. So you can only bring up 2 guys from the practice squad. And yeah, a bunch of guys are going to have to dress, but they don't have to play. They don't have to play. Like the offensive line. I mean, that's not a rotational position. So if guys like Fred Johnson and Jack Driscoll and Nick Gates and Trevor Keegan and Darren Kennard stay healthy and you make them active, they can play the whole game.
Right.
As long as they don't get injured. If Jahan Dotson and Anaya Smith and Johnny Wilson, you can play them the whole game. And we know the quarterback situation. We'll see how that is. So on and on and on down. You have backups. You have game day backups, and you can play them the whole game. Tristan McMullen at safety, Sidney Brown at safety, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. at linebacker. So that's how you do it. Those guys were going the opposite end of the spectrum, like not pointing that out. So I don't like that. But I find it humorous when the coaches say it and everybody, oh, that makes sense. I've been talking about it for 20 years because I hate the preseason thing. You don't have 90 players. Back in the old days, it was 75, but you don't have all those players.
John, are you the Sean Desai here? You don't have the cachet of Dan Campbell, so it didn't quite resonate as much.
Well, it should resonate for people here because the Eagles have been going to the playoffs, and we talk about it every year. But,
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I just chuckled at that. It's like people, they just thought of that. Oh, yeah, you can't just bring in 30 players off the street.
All right.
So yeah, but I mean, teams have been doing this for years. They still manage to rest their guys in week 18 if they want to rest their guys. So that part of it's bullshit as well.
Who do you expect to be kind of fully scratched this week? Saquon,
well, Jalen Hurts. Saquon. Most of the offense, because you don't want to. Just what you said, I'm guessing in AJ's case, maybe AJ, but maybe you don't want to say, hey, DeMonte, you got to go out there. Offensive line, same thing.
Is it as simple as going like seniority? Like if you're around, if you're
you can do it that way, yeah.
Slay,
you can also, like
Johnson.
AJ's been on the injury list the past couple of weeks when the knee injury. You could say it's related to the knee, that type of thing. So, and you're the head coach of the football team. You can do whatever you want at the end of the day. So, yeah. But, yeah, I kind of chuckled when everybody – it's like when Sean McVay named all the defensive players one week on the entire – remember that press conference? Sean Desai rattled off.
Oh, yeah, Desai. You said McVay. I'm like –
Sean McVay. No, I meant Sean McVay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He rattled off the entire defense of the team he was playing. He's the freaking head coach. He better know the players on the other team. Now, some coaches do the number game, but the players. And everybody made a big deal out of that. It's like, are you serious? It's like any
Yeah,
any
NFL head coach knows his opponents.
yeah. And everybody made a big deal. It was crazy. That's what I thought when I heard. It's not Dan Campbell's fault. I mean, he didn't make it viral. But everybody said, "Oh, that makes sense." what? Where do you think they're getting these magic players from?
Right.
You mentioned the practice squad. I mean, the practice squad is just about, and we should mention the Eagles brought back Chuck Harris because he got through waivers. No surprise there. Tariq Castro Beals is back. Our old friend Mekhi Gardner's back. So they signed those guys. They waived, released Teron Jackson and Lou Nichols. So that might, Lou's obviously a running back. That might give some people some hope with Saquon. But remember, Will Shipley's probably getting through the concussion protocol this week. You got Kenny Gainwell. And you also have Ty Davis Price on the practice squad who got elevated last week. So you got plenty of bodies. And even Kari Blossing game as a pullback type. But you got plenty of bodies there. Yeah, and we'll see how they handle it. I'm sure Nick will talk today and say, we'll see.
Yeah, that's what
We'll
he'll say.
see.
He doesn't say much of anything. I want to thank everybody for being here. It is a New Year's Day, Johnny Mac, so we'll have a little bit of fun today. Hard course is 100 watching and only 12 likes. Come on, everybody, hit that like button for us. We appreciate those who got up with us on this New Year's Day. I hope you guys had a good night, a safe night, happy night, a healthy night.
Yeah, it might be tough to get up for some people today.
Yes, my main man Slagger, he checks in, he goes, coffee, Advil, stat. I guess stat means like as soon as possible.
Yes.
Basically. So good stuff. Appreciate you being here, Slagger. Get that Advil, brother. Kick those feet up on the couch and listen to some Birds 365. We appreciate it. John, a story came out yesterday that I looked at and was like, what the fuck is that? All right. What the fuck is that? Is basically what I said. And it was about the New York Jets pursuing Howie Roseman. Now, full disclosure, I'm pretty positive that was literally just shock value in an article. I don't think there's any chance that Howie Roseman is going anywhere. But the reason I bring it up is because, one, I want to get your opinion on it. And two, I want to say, are we going to reach that point, you think, with owners where when there's a guy who's proven to be as valuable as Howie Roseman is to the Eagles, and he has built a roster that he's built, and you look across the league and you just don't see GMs building rosters like Howie. I mean, you talk about Stephen Jones, and he's like, oh, the Eagles are going to be in cap hell soon. And I'm like, they said that about Carson Wentz. They said that. They say it every year about the Eagles, and it never comes to fruition because Howie just continues to be able to manipulate, move, extend. A lot of that's to Jeffrey Lurie, but do you think we will reach a point in the NFL where teams are willing to give up potential equity in a team, to kind of win somebody over or take somebody from another spot, or if somebody's that valuable, kind of lay out the silver platter for them? What do you think, Joe?
You never say never, but I would say very unlikely. And the only reason I say never is because you never know the desperation of it. It only takes one person by himself.
Right. A guy like Woody Johnson.
Yeah. Nobody with any sense is going to do that. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head about, from what Stephen Jones said, from his perspective, he's correct, but he doesn't run his father doesn't run the Dallas Cowboys like Jeffrey Lurie. I'm glad you mentioned Jeffrey Lurie. No offense to Howie Roseman, but the vast majority of general managers are not allowed to do things. He's not doing anything that nobody else doesn't know. He's just allowed to do it.
Yeah, he's also better at it. He is better at it, right? Would you say
that? I don't think anybody else is allowed to do it.
Well, can I what's the breakdown of that then? Like, why would other owners not do it the way Lurie does? Like, is there any real disadvantage to that? Because when I look at it, I'm like, well, geez, Lurie, the value of his franchise is still skyrocketing. He's won the most NFC East titles in the 2000 era. Like, What is the downside to Lurie allowing Howie to operate like that? Other than I guess you shell out more cash.
Yeah. Well, the downside is, the downside is rich people don't tend to like losing money. That's the
There's no way
downside.
Jeffrey Lurie's losing money. That's my point.
Well, I'm saying losing. I don't mean losing money. I
Yeah,
mean
you mean.
losing money. In other words,
Gotcha.
if you have $1 million, you don't want to be at 990,000. Most of these guys, and it's very backward thinking, and that's a big advantage. And that's why I always try to bring up Jeffrey. Jeffrey's the key to the salary cap stuff, not Howie. I'm sorry, Howie. Yeah, I mean, to think that that he's got some bookkeeping trick. First of all, this league is all right. This is working. I'm going to copy this. Problem is, you got to get the owner on board.
Right.
That's the problem. And there's, a lot of people use the voidable years trick. They don't do it to the extent the Eagles do it. And that's because of Jeffrey. Jeffrey says, yeah, go ahead. So for those who don't give him credit, and they should give him credit, Jeffrey Lurie is a big part. It all starts with Jeffrey Lurie. Really is a big part of this team's success. And the freedom that he gives the front office to do what they need to do, even if it's kicking the can down the road. And you have everybody like Stephen Jones, it's his family. And he's like, well, we can't do that. Well, yeah, you can. You choose not to. And most teams choose not to, at least to the level. Everybody uses the voidable years trick at times, but they don't use it to the extent the Eagles use it.
Yeah. I don't really get it, to be honest. I mean, look, I understand what you're saying, where they want to keep more money, but in my estimation, when your team wins a lot, when your team is at the forefront of primetime games every year, when your team has won the most NFC East titles in the last 25 years, when you have a collection of talent on offense that is hard to be rivaled by any other franchise, that boosts the value of your asset, of your football team. So is it really just about they don't want to see money go in the short term versus the long term? Like Jeffrey Lurie's making more money hand over fist than probably all of them.
I think one presumption by fans is that every owner wants to win, and that is a very bad presumption.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
That is a very, very bad presumption.
It's a business. Probably make money.
There's probably a handful where it's like super important, and the Eagles are lucky enough to have one of them. And most, not that they're not trying to win, but it's a secondary goal.
Yeah, right. If we win, that's great. If we don't, as long as we made money, we'll be all right.
Yeah. So I think that's where fans go off, kilter. I really do. Not in Philadelphia.
That makes sense. I mean, I see what you're saying.
Because
Jerry Jones is probably the best example of that.
If you look at it from just Jerry Jones is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, deservedly so. But I always say to those guys, and we've talked to so many Hall of Fame selectors over the years on this show, but one of the things I always say about those guys, it should be clearly delineated. Jerry Jones is a Hall of Fame businessman for the NFL. No question about it. First ballot. He's the TV guy. He's on the TV committee. Everything this league is fueled by Jerry Jones. He runs half of the concessions of the stadiums in this. Forget about Dallas. Hall of Fame businessman. As an executive, not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close. And that's also the part where Jeffrey Lurie's a big part. I always joke about Cincinnati. Like Duke Tobin's a great general manager. Well, I mean, I would argue he's the best general manager in the NFL from the perspective of the assets that he's given and what he's been able to build despite the limitations. He's got a staff. You go to Cincinnati now. He's had a staff of 5-6 people. Howie's got a staff of like 35.
Yeah, right.
There is no salary cap in the front office. You can pay coaches whatever you want. You can pay executives whatever you want. You can pay scouts whatever you want. You can have as many scouts, have as many executives as you want. Again, Howie Roseman's great. And I got a lot of crap over the years for calling him a top 5 GM.
Yes, you did.
A lot
That's
of
true.
crap over the years. And now I got to scale people back. He's great, but there are other people who are just as good. And you got to point it to Jeffrey Lurie, the freedom that he gets and the ability. And then the biggest part of all, forget about all that stuff. Forget about the money and the support staff. He's allowed to make mistakes.
Right.
He's allowed to make, and he's made many mistakes, as people will bring up when things are going poorly. Oh, he drafted this guy, Everybody makes mistakes, especially when you're around as long as Howie Roseman has been. Typically, when you make those mistakes in other cities, you're out. You don't get a chance to learn from it. You don't get a chance to bounce back. How many GMs have hired 3 coaches in the NFL? You know, that doesn't happen.
Right.
So the patience, which I always bring up with Pittsburgh as well, that's a big part of it. And he's very good at his job. That's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, as Yale says, he's built up equity, without a doubt. You think we'll get to a point where maybe not equity in the franchise, but quarterback salary for a GM for a guy that you think no?
No. They make enough money. They're not making $50 million a year. No.
Well, any idea what they do make? Like, what could somebody reasonably lure Howie Roseman away?
And by the way, I should mention that story was by Tony Paulina. And Tony's very plugged in. He's not some Yahoo. But it wasn't really a report.
Yeah, it was more. Yeah,
it was speculation. Howie's from Brooklyn. He grew up a Jets fan. Mike Tannenbaum got him the interview with the Eagles because he kept bothering Mike Tannenbaum.
You're right. Didn't Mike pass on him in New York?
He didn't pass on him. He's like, he didn't have a space. He's working in New York. He said he was friends with Joe Banner at the time, and they're still friends. They created the 33rd team together. And Mike's been on the program. I've known Mike for years. For those who don't know the Howie story, he basically wanted to be a GM from when he was 13, 14 years old. And he kept badgering Mike Tannenbaum, badgering him, and one day he said to Joe Banner, hey, you should talk to this kid, try to make him an intern. He's so driven and so, just hyper focused on it and hyper ambitious. And Joe Banner took a shot and the rest is history. But Mike likes him tremendously and got his foot in the door, essentially. So, part of Tony knows that. So part of understanding Howie's love of the Jets when he was growing up and where he's from. And, it's just one of those things you say, well, if he gave him equity, well, Woody Johnson hadn't given him equity.
Right.
He'd rather have Brick Johnson. It's a crappily run organization. So it's just one of those things. You say, if they wanted to do this, would he listen? Probably. Yeah. Why wouldn't he?
Right.
But it's not going to happen. So I wouldn't get too worked up about it.
He's going to get there and say, well, you got to do business this way, and this way. And
that's another part.
In order for me to be successful, and Woody Johnson's going to say,
I would say,
out of my office.
Now, Howie's not leaving. As long as Jeffrey's here, Howie's not leaving. I've always said that. Yeah, and I shouldn't. You never say never. You leave the door open 1%, 2%, whatever. Because he fired Joe Banner, and he was close to Joe Banner. Essentially fired him. Didn't really fire him. And I'm talking about Jeffrey. But in the case of the shift, Jeffrey's over 70 now. So at some point, there's going to be a succession plan. And then Julian's going to take over, Julian Lurie. And who knows what he wants to do.
Yeah,
Then
I
it
was gonna say.
becomes, who's close? A lot of people, he's close to Alec Hallaby. Who knows? So at that stage, maybe there can be a change. But there's no evidence. Jeffrey's very healthy. There's no evidence he wants to step away anytime soon. But if there is a time where Howie won't be here, it's probably in that shift of power from Jeffrey to Julian. And by no means am I saying Julian doesn't like Howie. I have no idea what their relationship is. I'm just saying that's the common sense of when you have a new guy, they tend to want their people that are close to them. And it probably won't be great for the Eagles, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. Who do you think are the top 3 or top 5 GMs, John? Just the ones that jump out to you as the class of GMs in the
Well,
NFL.
I just told you one, Duke Tobin.
Yeah, Duke Tobin's good.
Brad Holmes in Detroit is
Oh,
built
he's
up.
done an excellent job, man, Brad Holmes.
Yeah, I still think John Lynch has done a tremendous job. Now
Yeah.
people will say, because they're having a bad year, it's injury driven. Again, I think Will McClay, I always say Will McClay all the time in Dallas. He's not technically a GM. He's one of the best personnel people in the NFL.
Right. They draft well.
But he's hamstrung. Then you start looking at the people, the younger GMs, and I'm shocked, but because it didn't look good early, but Kwesi Odopa-Mensah had a great offseason.
Yes, he did.
You got to do it consistently. But
what was the move he made early that everybody questioned? It was a draft move, wasn't it?
Well, they questioned what they were doing at quarterback, and they signed Sam Darnold. Now, moved on from Kirk Cousins, but his ability. Now, he also, to me, the most impressive thing was they had Danielle Hunter, and Danielle Hunter is a great player.
Right.
Having a great year in Houston, probably going to be an All-Pro, Pro Bowler. But they had to pay him close to $30 million a year. He was able to turn. All right, we're going to let Danielle Hunter leave, and he was able to sign Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Blake Cashman, who have all hit to a Pro Bowl level. Every single one of them. And they got 3 really good players by leaving one. That to me is the kind of stuff GMs have to do. They have to make difficult decisions.
Right.
And he's had a great offseason, but he hasn't been doing it a long time. So I'm just trying, I'm doing this off the
How
top
about Brett
of my head.
Veach?
Oh yeah, well, yeah. Say that. I'm doing it off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Obviously, Kansas City's done a phenomenal job, so he definitely belongs in the conversation. Yeah. So, I mean, those are some of the great. But if you ask me who number 1 is, I'm always going to go Duke Tobin because I know what he's up against, and he's unbelievable.
Yeah, definitely hard to go up against that. Good stuff, Johnny Mac. So that report came out speculating, as John mentioned, it was speculation on Howie to the Jets. Not happening, everybody. That's what I would say to that. But it is good that we have a GM here in Philly that's done such a good job, has built such a great roster in Philly. And credit to Jeffrey Lurie as well for kind of keeping that up. John, you started the show with a great little open on Zach Bond and what a great surprise he's been and how hard it is to really find a player that turns into this level of talent. What other surprises of 2024 as we now flush the toilet, John, on 2024? We are gone. See ya. Goodbye, 2024. We're coming for 2025. But the best surprises on this Eagles team, like what coming into this year, we had expectations. We had certain thoughts. We had certain opinions on how the season would go, how each player would play, or what they would be, or the unit. What has stood out to you the most? What has surprised you the most about the 13-3 Philadelphia Eagles so far this year?
Well, the defense. I mean, if you would have told me in the spring and summer coming off last year that this would be the number 1 defense in the NFL, I would have laughed at you. And that's my whole goal was, and I thought, getting Vic would obviously make them better. And I said, you probably want to get to mid-range, 16, 15, 16 would be a great year. and what he's been able to do with that defense and get the young players, almost every single young player has improved dramatically. And the ones that weren't here, I mean, to have two corners play at the level of Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Especially in this defense where there's so much zone coverage. And that means you have to rely heavily on communication and that part of it. But it's not just the rookies, you know. Jalen Carter has taken the big step forward. Nolan Smith has been unbelievable since he took over essentially the starting role when the injuries started to accumulate with Bryce Hupp and Brandon Graham. He's been tremendous. Moro Ajomo, even lesser guys, you know, a big step forward. Milton Williams is still a young player. He's going to get a lot of money, Milton Williams, whether it's here or somewhere else. Bet on himself, and he did the right thing. N'Kobe Dean, what a year he's had, overshadowed by Zach Bond. Vic was talking about that yesterday. Like, he's played great after a slow start.
Yes, he has.
He's been unbelievable. Reed Blankenship, CJ, Defensive Player of the Week. He's had 4 interceptions in 4 games. He had a tough start, but now he's playing like the playmaker he is. Just everything.
Saquon in. I know he's
Saquon, I mean, you never expect 2,009 people in the history of the game.
Right.
But as I said in the opening when I was talking about Zach, like, everybody knew Saquon was great. It's just a matter of how good was he going to be.
Right.
Like, I put it at 1,650 to 1,700 total yards. That's where I put him at. That's a great season for a running back. You know, so it was a matter of
like 2,300 with receiving.
Yeah. Which is, historic.
Yeah.
So you never expect historic. So from that standpoint, it's a surprise. But, everybody knew Saquon was good. Did they know that all those defenders were going to be good? Probably not.
Yeah, John, when they signed Zach Bond, we do a breaking news report on everything that happens, basically, all through the offseason. We didn't even do a breaking news report on Zach.
Why would you?
It was like, oh, they signed a practice squad or a depth piece or a rotational piece at somewhere or, a bottom of the roster guy. We didn't even do a report on it. I'm like, wow, this guy's turned out to be, as you mentioned, not Pro Bowl, potential All-Pro, potential Defensive Player of the Year. It's just crazy what you're getting from that guy.
Yeah. I don't think there's any question he's going to be an All-Pro. He's probably not going to win Defensive Player of the Year, but he should be top 5. I'll say that.
You think All-Pro's a lock, even with the politics of that award?
Well, I'm not gonna say lock, because unfortunately some of the people that vote for that are not the most well educated as far as the league as a whole. And you always have a little bit of a hometown bias typically. So you never say lock, because and then there's only 2 of them, I mean, it's not like, and then you have Fred Warner, who's going to be an All-Pro. And that's not only, he's having a great year. The All-Pros should be Fred Warner and Zach Bond. That should be the All-Pros. Now, Fred, everybody knows Fred belongs in that category. So you have, not only do you have a high level player, but you have the reputation as well. So I would call him an absolute lock. And then it becomes like Bobby Wagner's having a great year. Zach Bond should get it over Bobby Wagner.
Yeah,
Bobby Wagner
comes in.
Is the Hall of Famer, has been doing it for so long. So I'm not going to say 100%, but I do think there's enough smart voters to get Zach over the top. But we'll see. He'll definitely be second team. I will say that, at worst case scenario.
Yeah, good stuff there from Zach Bond. Pretty impressive. All right, John, I want to turn the page. I want to ask a question here about Jalen Hurts. All right, and Jalen Hurts is out right now. He obviously missed last week. He missed most of the game the week prior versus the Commanders. We've seen Kenny Pickett. We've seen Tanner McKee. But Jalen Hurts, I mean, it all starts and ends with him, and that's the case for any quarterback on any NFL team. But certainly in the heightened, hyper-focused city of Philadelphia, how do you grade Jalen Hurts and what he's done for this team this year?
He's been fine, but a little bit of it, I would say, lean towards a little bit of a disappointment, to be honest. I think it's his worst year as a starting quarterback, I've said, and that includes his first year.